My sister banned me from her $9,300 wedding after taking my money, so I let her perfect fairy tale day publicly collapse before everyone's eyes. They left me off the wedding guest list, but kept my name on the bill, nearly $10,000 and not a single seat reserved. That's when I realized love without respect is just another transaction. My name is Penelope Harris. I own a small bakery in Asheville, North Carolina. It's not flashy, but it's honest. I've spent the last 7 years waking up at 4 a.m., mixing batter while the city sleeps, believing that if you give enough, especially to family, you'll always have a place at the table. But on one ordinary Friday afternoon, a Facebook post proved me wrong. I was on break, hands still dusted with powdered sugar, checking orders on my app when I somehow ended up scrolling through Facebook. And then I froze. Right at the top of my feed was a post from my younger sister, Samantha Harris, a photo of a wedding invitation. Ivory background with shimmering gold trim. Elegant cursive script displayed their names, Samantha and Noah. Below that, a self-satisfied caption read, "The countdown begins. Can't wait to share this sacred moment with all my dearest loved ones." I read it 3 times. No text, no letter, no call, and absolutely no invitation sent to me. I tapped the photo, scrolling through the comments. Relatives, friends, even Sam's old CO workers were chiming in with congratulations. One wrote, "Wedding of the year." Another said, "So chic. Must be a super exclusive guest list." My throat went dry. No, it couldn't be. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe I missed something. After all, I was the one who signed the venue contract 6 months ago, fronted $5,000 for the deposit, and transferred another $2,500 for the catering down payment when our parents hesitated. Sam even cried over the phone one night, saying, "I really want that Jenny Yu dress. I know it's pricey, but it's my big day." So, I wired her another $1,800, no questions asked. So, no, there was no way I wasn't invited. That made no sense. I messaged her, keeping the tone light. "Hey Sam, I just saw your wedding invite on Facebook. I was wondering if maybe mine got lost in the mail." I hit send, put my phone down, tried to focus on work, but my chest felt like a tangled string. 15 minutes passed, then 30. The sunlight faded into a muted gold, and customers trickled out with their end-of-day treats, but my phone stayed silent. No reply, no dots typing. I told myself maybe she was busy, maybe she was going to call, maybe I was overthinking, until my phone buzzed at 8:42 p.m. Sender, Samantha. I opened the message. Short, crisp, unforgettable. "Pen, I hope you understand. We had to be very selective with the guest list. It's a minimal, elegant event. I just wanted everything to feel on brand. Nothing personal. Still love you. Hope you'll be cheering us on from afar." My entire body went cold. Not on brand. Cheering from afar. I laughed, but it wasn't out of amusement. I hadn't just been excluded. I had been deliberately cut out of an event I nearly paid for. And the reason? I didn't fit the upscale, curated image my sister wanted to present. This was the same sister who used to fight me over the last egg in our grandmother's tiny kitchen, laughing as flour flew everywhere because we barely had enough for breakfast. And now that same sister decided I didn't belong at the most important day of her life, a day I had funded to become possible. I don't remember how long I sat there after reading that message, but I remember one thing clearly. Whatever trust I had left in her, it tore apart that night. I turned the lights off early. I wasn't tired, just couldn't stomach the sight of my own reflection staring back at me. A 38-year-old woman, owner of a well-known downtown bakery, once featured in a local magazine for her handcrafted wedding cakes made with organic ingredients, excluded by her own sister for not being the right vibe. I lay in bed that night, eyes wide open in the dark, every memory piercing like tiny needles under my skin. Sam wasn't always like this. There was a time she trailed me around our grandmother's kitchen, hands covered in flour, giggling when I dropped an egg. But things started changing when she got into business school in Boston. Family dinners stopped being about meatloaf and laughter. She started talking about branding, about aesthetic minimalism, about omni-channel marketing. And I, her older sister, who dropped out of college to run a bakery that smelled like vanilla and sweat, became a shadow. I remember the first time I invited Sam to the shop after opening. I was 29, working 14-hour days to meet wedding orders, hands nicked and burned from baking. I proudly showed her the hand-built shelves, the pendant lights I wired myself. She looked around, nodded, and said something I'll never forget. "Cute pen, just a bit handmade. You know, people expect premium experiences now." I forced a smile, hiding the cracks in my skin from scrubbing pans all night before. From that day on, Sam rarely came back. Always said she was too busy networking, building a professional profile on LinkedIn. I didn't push because deep down I knew what she thought of me. That what I did was temporary. No office, no white blouse, no badge on a lanyard. All I had was the smell of cinnamon and butter, a loyal staff, and a wedding cake order list booked out 2 months ahead. I still remember the family dinners when my parents would beam about Sam's promotion to strategy lead at some up-and-coming startup. They toasted, asked a million questions about her job. But when I told them my bakery had officially passed 6 figures in revenue after 5 years, just one sentence, "Oh, that's nice, everyone likes sweets," that was it. They never asked how many years I had to wake up at 4 a.m. They never cared how many part-time employees I hired to support local college students. None of that was seen as meaningful because to them, I didn't have a title. I thought I'd gotten used to it. But Sam's message last night felt like a knife reopening a wound that never truly healed. I had contributed nearly $10,000 to her wedding. No one forced me. I did it because I believed that at the very least on her big day I'd be sitting in the front row watching my little sister walk out in the dress I helped her choose. But instead, you don't fit the vibe. I kept repeating that phrase in my head like a stone pressing heavier on my chest each time. How many years of hard work did it take me to buy my first commercial oven? How many sleepless nights to fulfill orders on time? How many times did I scrub floors, wash pans, and serve customers by myself? All of that. And still, somehow, I wasn't worthy enough to be there. I rolled over in bed and stared at the ceiling. I wasn't angry. There was only one thought forming slowly, quietly, like a whisper inside me. I let them judge me through the eyes of people who never understood what real work looks like. I thought love was enough, but they didn't need love. They needed an image, and I funded that image through my sweat, my time, and my labor for the last time. The next morning, I got up early, still drifting between sleep and awareness. No Sunday orders. I shut down the ovens, locked the bakery, got in my car, and drove down the familiar road toward my parents' wooden house, about 20 minutes from downtown. I didn't call ahead, no text, no warning. I didn't even bring anything except a light sweater over my butter-scented baking dress. I parked beside the old maple trees, now bare. Stepping out, I didn't make an effort to be quiet, but my childhood instincts guided me through the back door without a single creak. The sound of Samantha's heels echoed from the kitchen. I held my breath, not out of fear, but because I needed to hear what they said when I wasn't in the room. "If she shows up at the wedding, it'll ruin the image I've built," Sam snapped. "I told you it's a refined, elegant event. I can't have someone wearing a bakery apron and a cherry print headband standing next to marketing directors and lawyers." I stood frozen behind the cracked door, fingers gripping the wooden frame. "But she's your sister," my mom said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, you know how it is. Every time she shows up, people ask what she does, and she just grins and says, 'I make wedding cakes.' Like it's a hobby. It's awkward. People are talking startups, investments, MBAs, and she's out here talking about buttercream. How am I supposed to include her in that setting?" My stomach twisted like someone had grabbed it with both hands. "Penelope is a good person," my mom said after a pause. "But she just doesn't fit this type of event. She's blunt, and she always smells like vanilla and butter." I swallowed hard. My dad's voice drifted faintly from the living room. "She's done more than anyone to help. We owe her a lot." "No one forced her to pay," Sam cut in. "She volunteered. I didn't ask. I just want a proper wedding, and if that means cutting out a few mismatched elements, I'll do it." I pushed the door open. They all froze. My mom stood over a cutting board, knife suspended in midair. My dad sat halfway turned toward the window. Sam stood tall, hands on her hips, eyes wide when she saw me. I closed the door gently behind me, and stepped into the kitchen, not looking at anyone for the first few seconds. "Mismatched," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to silence the room. "So, I'm the off-brand color in your perfect little palette?" Sam tried to compose herself, mustering a weak smile. "You came without calling. That's unexpected." "Didn't want me embarrassing you in front of your friends," I said. "But taking my money to fund your refined event? No shame there." "What are you talking about?" Sam deflected. "I never asked you to pay." I turned to my mom. "What about you, Mom? Do you really think I'm not elegant enough to sit at the same table as your friends in suits talking stock options?" My mom went silent. Then she lowered her gaze. "Penelope, it's not personal. Sometimes lifestyles just don't align well." I laughed, hollow and brittle. It wasn't that they were wrong. It was that I had already heard it all. And now, there was nothing left to pretend about. "I don't fit the image Sam wants. I don't meet your definition of graceful. And Dad," I turned to him, "you always sit quietly and let it all happen." He said nothing, only looked at me with a mix of sorrow and helplessness. I took a deep breath and pulled my car keys from my pocket. Well, I'm finally choosing to help myself. I'll stay away from a world I was never invited into. No one stopped me as I walked out the door, and in that moment, I realized I had never truly been accepted. It wasn't about being enough. I just didn't fit the version of family they'd built. I drove away from my parents' house with the window half down, letting the cold morning air slap my face awake. But nothing was cold enough to numb the sting still lodged deep in my chest. I was back at the bakery before 10 a.m., fired up the ovens, even though there were no orders that day, just to keep my hands busy, just to let the hum of the stand mixer drown out the words still echoing in my head. Not a good fit, a bit too homemade, hard to blend her in. The cake I made that morning wasn't for anyone. I just poured the batter into the pan, baked it, and stood there watching it rise through the glass door of the oven. The warm vanilla scent filled the kitchen, but never reached me. My phone buzzed close to noon. "Sender, Samantha." I glanced at the screen. The message was only one line, but it hit like a slap. "Pen, can you cover the remaining $1,200 for the wedding cake before Friday? They need payment to hold the delivery slot." I laughed, a sharp, blade-thin laugh. It wasn't humor. It was disbelief at the audacity. I didn't need to read it twice to be sure. No apology, no mention of the conversation from that morning, no acknowledgement that I had heard every word. Just a request like I was her personal accountant. Not fit to attend the wedding, but still expected to fund it. I set the phone down, wiped my hands on my apron, and poured myself a cup of coffee. I sat at my desk, looking at the freshly baked vanilla cake, and pictured the moment Sam would read the message I was about to send. I picked up the phone, typing each word slowly, every sentence peeling off another layer of quiet endurance. "Sam, I wouldn't want to embarrass you in front of your friends by making you explain that your sister is a baker, so I'll respect that. I'm sure you're resourceful enough to handle the rest without someone who doesn't fit the vibe." I wasn't harsh, I wasn't cruel, but every word was a door closing that I had left ajar far too long. I hit send. 5 minutes later, the first call came in. I ignored the call. 12 minutes after that, a second call, this time from Mom, then Dad, then Sam again. I didn't answer. I closed the shop early, went home, turned off my phone, and spent the entire afternoon cleaning the balcony, tossed out every dried-up flower pot, dusted the corners I usually ignored because of work. My hands stayed busy, but my mind was strangely at peace. That day was the first time I said no to Sam. Not out of anger, but because I finally understood. I didn't need to pay for approval from a family that had already written me out of the frame. That evening, when I turned my phone back on, there were 14 missed calls. 7 texts from Mom, 3 from Dad, and 5 from Sam. Long scattered messages that all said the same thing: fix this just like I always did. But this time, I wasn't going to be the cushion catching everyone's fall. I didn't want another supporting role in a script designed to keep me quietly carrying the weight. I deleted every message, not out of spite, but because I was redrawing the lines. No one has the right to turn kindness into obligation. No one has the right to use blood ties as a reason to take advantage. And my sister was going to learn how to get married without her baker sister footing the bill. That afternoon, while I was frosting a wedding cake for one of my longtime clients, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing on the stainless steel counter beside the oven. Mom called, then Dad, then Sam, then Mom again. I didn't pick up. I no longer had the patience to hear the sweet-toned, guilt-laced openers like, "Pen, we're family," or, "I know you're upset, honey, but this is a big deal." I sent them all to voicemail. But they didn't stop. The next morning, as soon as I unlocked the bakery, the screen lit up with another wave of texts. "Your sister's really stressed right now. You can't stay silent forever. Mom, 5 minutes later, you agreed to handle the cake. You said it yourself. Canceling now is irresponsible. Then, don't make this bigger than it needs to be. I know you're mad, but you already said yes." Dad, a rare message from him. "Sweetheart, I think you should clear things up with Sam. Avoid misunderstandings." Misunderstandings. I let out a dry laugh. No one asked how I was feeling. Not a single apology. No one mentioned that I had been cut out of the very wedding I helped finance. Everything revolved around one thing. I was expected to keep my promise. I stared at the phone screen, then set it down and started preparing orders like any other day. My hands were mixing batter, cutting parchment paper, weighing powdered sugar, but my mind was ice cold. That evening, I decided to call back, but not Sam. I called Mom. She answered after 2 rings. "Penelope, finally. You don't need to say much." I cut her off, my voice eerily calm. "I'm just calling to make one thing clear." She was silent for a few seconds, then sighed. "I know you're upset, but this can still be worked out." "No, Mom, it's not about being upset." I gently gripped the water glass in my hand. It's about realizing where I stand in this family, and I've decided not to play the same role anymore. "Penelope, you never once asked how I felt about being excluded from my sister's wedding, even after paying for nearly half of it," I said, my voice steady and clear. "You never asked why I said no this time. You just called me irresponsible. What's done is done, sweetheart. There's no use in holding on to it." Done. No one accidentally leaves someone out of an event they funded. I paused. "Do you know how it feels? Like being a walking ATM. Call me when you need something. Forget me when you don't." Silence on the other end. I exhaled slowly. "Mom, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done with the role. I won't pay another dime. No handouts, no loans, no guarantees, no deposits. If someone invites me, I'll show up. If they don't, I won't force my way in. Simple and clear. Have you really thought this through?" "More than you think." I hung up before she could say anything else. Not out of disrespect, but because I didn't want to give myself a chance to soften again. Sam texted later that night. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. The wedding cake was just a small part. I need your help, that's all." I read it again and again. No apology, no sign that she understood the weight of what she had done. Just another ask, another demand. I replied with one line. "I've decided to put myself first for once." I set the phone down, closed the app, and turned on some soft jazz in the shop. The sky over Asheville was slowly dimming, but inside my kitchen, the lights glowed warmly. The air smelled sweet, and for the first time in years, I knew exactly where my boundaries were. On Monday morning, I was showing Olivia, my new intern, how to adjust the oven temperature for lemon butter cakes when the front doorbell chimed. It wasn't a customer, it wasn't a delivery, it was my mother. She wore her usual beige wool coat, her hair tied up neatly, but the tension on her face was impossible to hide. Her eyes scanned the shop before landing on me standing behind the counter in my flour-speckled apron. I gently set the tray of cakes down and said quietly to Olivia, "Can you check on the afternoon delivery list for me?" She nodded and walked away, leaving just me and Mom in the warm air filled with vanilla and lemon zest. "What brings you here, Mom?" I asked calmly, like I was greeting a customer. "I didn't want to come," she began. "But Samantha, she's in panic mode, Penelope." I rested my hands lightly on the stainless steel table. Silent. Mom stepped closer and lowered her voice like she was revealing a state secret. "The venue just called. If they don't get the remaining balance by Wednesday, they'll cancel. The wedding cake still isn't finalized. The florist hasn't been paid the deposit yet. I said nothing, letting her continue. There are only 2 weeks left. Everything is unraveling. You know how long Samantha has planned this day. If no one helps, she'll lose everything. And everyone assumes that help will come from me, I replied flatly. Mom hesitated. Penelope, you can afford it. You're not struggling. It's not about whether I can, I cut in, eyes locked on hers. It's about the fact that I don't want to. Her brows furrowed, lips tightening. You're really going to let your sister lose everything over a small misunderstanding? I let out a quiet laugh and shook my head. Mom, this isn't a misunderstanding. Samantha deliberately excluded me from the wedding. She knew exactly what she was doing. My own sister didn't consider me part of her special day, yet still expected me to help fund it. Strange, isn't it? You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. We're family. Sometimes people say the wrong thing or make clumsy decisions. You're calling being cut from the guest list after I paid nearly half the wedding cost a clumsy decision? I saw her flinch slightly, then tighten her grip on her purse strap. Penelope, this wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. If it's not done right, she'll regret it forever. And she should have thought harder before curating her guest list, I said flatly, stepping toward the fridge and pulling out a tray of chilled mousse. You said I wasn't the right fit to show up, so surely my money doesn't fit on the wedding cake invoice either. Don't be so cold. Mom's voice rose slightly. You promised. You can't back out last minute. I didn't promise. I offered to help because I thought I was part of her joy. I'm not. And I'm no longer the backup wallet for selfish decisions. You'll regret this, she said after a pause, her gaze dropping. I looked at her calmly. If I'm going to regret setting a clear boundary, then I should have started a long time ago. She didn't respond. She turned and walked out of my shop like it had never belonged to anyone in her family. I stood still for a while, then turned back to the oven. The stand mixer whirred softly. The scent of baked cake filled the air. I could live without being at my sister's wedding, but I couldn't keep living as an invisible arm, summoned only when something flashy needed funding. If Sam wanted a wedding without me, then she shouldn't expect me to pay for the privilege of being absent. Samantha's wedding day fell on a crisp Saturday morning in late autumn. The air was cool, the clouds light, and the sun filtered through like soft tulle. A perfect day for a white dress, outdoor photos, and champagne flutes raised to the sound of a piano, but not for them. I was rearranging the strawberry tart display in the bakery when the phone rang. The number was familiar, too familiar. I didn't answer. A few minutes later, a text popped up from Maddie, my cousin, and one of Samantha's bridesmaids. Pen, you won't believe this. They just got kicked out of the venue. Staff locked the doors right in front of the guests. The bride nearly fainted. I slowly set the tray down, washed my hands, and read the message again. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I wasn't surprised. I'd seen it coming. No one had paid the remaining venue balance. No white knight swooped in at the last minute, and clearly I wasn't the on-brand guest meant to be present. At 12:18 p.m., Samantha called me. I picked up, not to comfort her, but because I wanted to hear her say it. Penelope, she sobbed. You must be thrilled right now, huh? You won. You just ruined my wedding. I pulled the phone slightly away from my ear and looked out the window where the soft sunlight was casting reflections on the clean row of glassware. You've got it wrong, Sam, I replied evenly. I didn't ruin anything. You did. If you had just paid like you promised, none of this would have happened. She practically screamed. You said you would. You told me I didn't belong at the wedding. So why was my money still welcome? Silence on the other end. I continued, voice calm. I didn't let you fail. You orchestrated everything and cut out the people who actually mattered to build a perfect day around people you thought were worthy. If that perfection collapsed over one missing payment, maybe it was never as solid as you believed. You're seriously going to let me be humiliated like this? Sam's voice cracked. I didn't think you could be so cold. You didn't think that because you're used to a sister who always opens her wallet for you. But I finally made a different choice, and you'll have to get used to that. I heard her sniffle, trying to say something more, but she hung up. About an hour later, Maddie texted again. The wedding had been moved to the backyard of a family friend on the groom's side. No live music, no towering cake. The flowers had been replaced with a few simple bundles rushed together at the last minute. Guests who didn't get the message stood around confused, some leaving early. And Samantha, according to Maddie, sat in the dressing room for nearly half the event. She didn't greet anyone, didn't take photos, didn't smile. I stayed at the shop until dusk, scrubbing every pan, restocking each ingredient bin. No one called, no one interrupted. After all those years, I was no longer caught between being the loyal sister and the invisible support system. I was just me, a good baker, someone who knew how to say no, and now, someone who knew how to stay out of a mess I never should have been dragged into in the first place. 2 days after the wedding, on a gloomy afternoon, I got a text from Samantha. "Do you have time for coffee this afternoon? I want to talk." No exclamation point, no apology, but also no blame. I stared at the message for exactly 3 seconds, then typed back, "Sure, Sparrow's Nest. 4 o'clock. It was a small cafe tucked into the historic district, quiet and warm. I didn't choose it out of familiarity, but because it didn't have private rooms or dark corners where anyone could launch into a performance. Everything happened under soft yellow lighting with the gentle sound of spoons stirring coffee. I arrived on time. Samantha was already there, her face slightly made up, but still showing the fatigue of a stormy week. She wore a cream-colored turtleneck sweater, hair pulled back low, hands wrapped around a latte like it was the only thing keeping her steady. "Hi," Sam said softly, as I pulled out the chair across from her. "Hey," I replied, setting my bag on the floor. About 30 seconds passed in silence, save for the waiter gliding past. I didn't break it. I wanted to see what Sam was really here for. "I know the wedding didn't go as planned," she started. "Everything just spiraled, and I probably shouldn't have let it get that far." I raised an eyebrow, saying nothing. Sam lowered her gaze, twisting her cup between her fingers. "I'm not here to fight. I just wanted to ask, if I invited you now as family, would you be willing to help me cover some of the wedding debt?" I set my cappuccino down, my palms still warm from the cup. "If you invited me now," I repeated slowly. "What does that mean? You're asking if I'll help, but only if you acknowledge I exist." "It's not like that," Sam fumbled. I don't want things to end like this. I don't want to lose you." I looked her straight in the eyes. "You didn't lose me, Sam. You left me out on purpose, just because I didn't fit the polished image you were curating. And now that that image is cracked, you want to rebuild it using my money?" Her cheeks flushed. She opened her mouth to object, but I raised a hand. "People don't say you didn't mean to. You had 6 months to treat me fairly. You chose not to, and now you have to live with that choice." "I just wanted the day to be perfect," she murmured. "But you didn't need me for perfect," I said, rising to my feet. "So now you can finish it without me." "You're leaving?" Sam asked, eyes wide. "Yes," I smiled calmly. "Go ahead and finish your coffee. At least it's still warm." I walked away without looking back. It wasn't pride holding me upright. It was survival. A year after that final meeting, autumn returned to Asheville. The maple tree in front of my bakery turned a brilliant red, its leaves scattered across the old brick steps. The window remained spotless, still bearing the sign Harris and Vanilla, baked from the heart. I never changed the name, despite a few marketing-savvy friends suggesting I rebrand. I didn't need flashy branding. I needed a place that truly reflected who I was. Regulars still came by, some for the pastries, some for the morning greeting, and a few just to watch me work through the glass window, saying the shop felt oddly peaceful. I never told them what it cost me to earn that peace. My family stayed silent for a long time after the wedding. No calls, no texts, no holiday invites. I figured they needed time. So did I. 3 months later, Mom called. Not to guilt me, not to ask for money. She just asked, "How are you doing? I saw online that people are raving about your cakes." "I'm fine, thanks, Mom," I replied simply. Since then, my mom started being more careful every time she reached out. No more pressure in her voice, No more lines like family means you have to or you need to understand that. She spoke less. And whenever she called, she waited for me to respond, no longer rushing me like before. Dad stayed the same, quiet as always. But one day, he left a postcard at my shop. No name, no message, just 3 carefully written words, proud of you. That's when I realized sometimes change doesn't come through a clear apology, but through someone finally choosing silence at the right moment. As for Samantha, she never apologized. No, I was wrong. No, can you forgive me? Not once. But there were no more texts asking for money. No requests, no demands. I heard she changed jobs a few months after the wedding. Her old company had layoffs. She started freelancing for a few online beauty brands. Recently, I saw her post photos from a new account where she shares tips for budget-friendly wedding decor. The pictures were still polished, her style still tidy, but the captions, well, they seemed more real. I didn't comment, didn't message. We kept our distance like 2 people who once knew each other well, but no longer had a reason to walk the same path. And I wasn't sad about that. I live with enough and more clearly than ever. I renovated the small apartment above my bakery, the place I used to crash during long shifts, and made it into a real home. I finally bought the industrial mixer I'd wanted for 3 years. I hired someone new, Jamal, a culinary student, who told me I'd given him faith in honest work. Every dollar I earn now goes into myself, into a life I control. I'm no longer someone's emergency plan, no longer a background character in someone else's spotlight. I'm not wealthier, but I'm no longer being used. And that freedom to me is worth more than any amount of money. One day, Olivia, a former employee who'd moved to another city, came back to visit. When I offered her a slice of fresh lemon cake, she looked at me for a moment and asked, "Do you ever regret cutting ties with your family?" I didn't answer right away. I simply sliced another piece, set it on a floral-rimmed plate, and said quietly, "If that was the only way to stop being treated like I didn't matter, then no. I don't regret it." She nodded. Didn't ask anything else. And I knew I was on the right path. Penelope's story isn't just a wake-up call about being taken advantage of by family. It's proof that sometimes real love means setting boundaries. Not everyone who shares your blood deserves your unconditional kindness. When you step out of the role others forced on you and hold on to your own worth, freedom and peace will follow. Because true happiness doesn't come from being acknowledged. It comes from knowing you no longer need to prove anything.